All eyes still on the Republican Senate primary in Pennsylvania. We're 2 full days after the polls close. It's still a really, really tight race between Dr. Mehmet Oz and David McCormick. The latest numbers show Oz's lead shrinking tonight to under 1,100 votes. The McCormick campaign is optimistic. There's still many mail-in ballots yet to be counted, and he's been edging closer. About 17,000 or so GOP ballots have yet to be tabulated, but as you can see, most of the outstanding votes are in Philadelphia, and although Oz is currently outrunning McCormick 38-25 in Philly, the McCormick camp believes the earlier vote will tip their way. They also think that late-arriving military ballots from overseas will pad their total. Now, this is ironic, given that just a few weeks ago, when asked about the 2020 election during a debate, McCormick said this.
We have a tragedy here that most Republican voters in Pennsylvania don't believe in the integrity of the election. And there's all sorts of reasons to worry about it, with the extension of the mail-in ballot and the lack of security of the ballot boxes, the lack of oversight of precincts.
Flash forward to Tuesday night, and all of a sudden it's, let's keep counting.
Right now we have tens of thousands of mail-in ballots that have not been counted, that are going to need to be counted beginning tomorrow.
So now the mail votes are critical and valid. Here's the thing that I don't think enough people are talking about. Pennsylvania law doesn't allow the mail-in votes to begin to be counted until 7 a.m. on Election Day. And so that inevitably leads to a counting process that's going to extend beyond Election Day, which leads to questions from skeptics, which leads to lingering doubt as races remain undecided. And all that leads to comments like this from former President Donald Trump, who says, quote, Dr. Oz should declare victory. It makes it much harder for them to cheat with the ballots that they just happen to find. And tonight, Trump weighed in again, saying, quote, the Pennsylvania Oz race is ridiculous. How long does it take to count votes? France, same day, all paper, had verified results in the evening. U.S. is a laughing stock in elections. Stop finding votes in Pennsylvania. Rigged. Now, as we talked about on the show last night, this voter fraud thing is obviously being driven entirely by the former president, right? I mean, I don't know who he's saying is rigging it. The Republicans who support McCormick are rigging it against Oz? While Oz and McCormick have tiptoed around saying the 2020 election was somehow stolen from Trump, both candidates have been quick to point out supposed issues and irregularities with the voting in Pennsylvania in 2020, in particular singling out mail-in voting, until now, when it may take one or the other over the finish line. So for now, no complaining about the system. So my question is, does former President Trump have a sizable constituency in the party who actually want Dr. Oz to declare victory and ignore the final vote tally as decided by the Republican voters of Pennsylvania? I doubt it. And I think that's a positive sign, that we have two 2020 election skeptics, let's call them, now fully accepting the very same process with the same rules in 2022. They may not like some of the rules, and some are currently being challenged in the courts, but that's a separate issue from claiming that fake votes will be found, that the election is rigged. Joining us now is Christopher Nicholas. He's a longtime Republican political consultant in Pennsylvania. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, so I got to ask you the first question because, you know, you're the exact right guy to ask this to. Based on what we are seeing now, the trends you're seeing, the results we're seeing, where does this race end up?
Hi, Dan. Thanks for having me on tonight. I said on election night when I went to bed that given the votes that were out and where they were coming from and the type of votes they were, mail-in ballots, I'd rather be Dave McCormick than Mehmet Oz. That's a dispassionate view of the votes that were out, and I'm sticking to that now for reasons we have yet to fully figure out. McCormick has been doing much better with the folks who voted before Election Day. So since most of the votes remaining are from people who voted by mail, absentee, and even the military ballots, that to me, the trend line is working in McCormick's favor. He's gone from down 2,700 to down what you just said earlier, less than 1,100.
So what do you think, though, about what happens now? I mean, I've been relieved that both Oz and McCormick seem to be accepting the process, right? They seem to be understanding that this takes time. It was actually the Republican
Agreed.
legislature in
Agreed.
Pennsylvania that enacted this law that says you can't start counting the absentee and mail-in ballots until the day of the election. That's a good thing. Does this say to you that maybe conservatives, Republicans in Pennsylvania are ready to turn the page on the 2020 rigged stuff?
I hope it does, Dan, because campaigns naturally have to be about the future, not the past. I think both Dr. Oz and Dave McCormick have been comporting themselves well, allowing the process to play itself out. It's been, both of them, fairly radio silent since election night. I think once the state certifies one of them as the winner, which will be next Tuesday-ish, then once we have a winner and the recount starts, then it'll get political and the lawyers will come in and that'll be a totally different process.
Right. At that point, they'll start fighting about what the rules ought to be, and they already are fighting about what the rules ought to be. It's already in the Court of Appeals has ruled on it. It's going up to the Supreme Court in Pennsylvania to determine what the rules should be for the election. That's different than what they are today. You've commented on Kathy Barnett's relatively poor showing, meaning poor showing compared to what it looked like going into Election Day. Is that a sign that the party is moving away from the extremes?
I think it's a sign that when her 15 minutes of fame appeared, she was not ready for it. She could not answer basic questions about where she was from and what colleges she had worked at and that sort of thing. So I think she kind of flunked that audition. She, at the same time, blamed the press for not vetting her enough and then wouldn't let them into her campaign events. So she flatlined at the end. She was getting in the mid-20s in the surveys, and she ended up at the mid-20s on election night, which tells me that the undecideds broke primarily to Oz and McCormick in the last 72 hours.
Final question. Who has a better shot of beating John Fetterman, the Democrat, Oz or McCormick?
You know, I'm going to punt, Dan. I'm sorry. Both guys are serious adults, strong conservatives who can win statewide, know how to run big-time campaigns, and both of them would be 10,000% better than Lieutenant Governor Fetterman being moved up to the Senate.
But in terms of analysis of who you think has a better shot of winning?
Well, it's hard to look at the primary and say one was stronger than the other since they're only separated by less than 0.5%. They both have different strengths and weaknesses, but I think the Republican Party will respond favorably to whomever of those two fellows win, because, as I said, they're both strong conservatives who can run winning campaigns.
Because, as you know, the argument that people like Sean Hannity and others have made is that Oz is the more electable of the candidates, and that was the reason that many said that they went along with the Trump endorsement of him. But it sounds like you're not necessarily buying that.
No, and that's not a put down on either guy. Both of them have fairly unlimited personal resources and the ability to raise a lot of money.
Yep.
The outside groups and the NRSC, they're all going to be totally in whomever wins, and whomever wins, they're going to be a strong contrast to Mr. Fetterman.
Christopher Nicholas, thank you very much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.